Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri for New Shelves Books, and we are excited to be here to be talking about publishing, marketing, and the business of being an author. You can join us any Friday live by going to newshelves.com/FAF and register for our Zoom call. It is absolutely free. Registration is required. And of course, we do put our replays over on YouTube, which is just New Shelves. I'm sorry, it's just youtube.com/New Shelves Books. So you can catch those as well. And we do accept emailed in questions to info@newshelves.com. So if you have a question, but you can't join us live because of timing, whatever it is, you can email those questions in and then catch the replay on YouTube. So we've got some of those emailed questions in, and we also have some live questions. So we're going to jump in and see what we can help you answer today. First question is from Jackie. Can you use specific names of colas, for example, Dr. Pepper or Coca-Cola, in your book? Or is this a trademark copyright conflict? As always, I will say I'm not a lawyer. If you have concerns about legal action, then always, check in with a lawyer. But I will tell you what I commonly understand, and that is that it's fine to use name brands in your book as long as you do give credit. So, you use the little trademark brand if it's supposed to be there. The other thing is that typically you're not going to have any problems if you're using a name brand as long as it's a positive connection. But if, for example, you're saying that a mouse was found in a very popular chain restaurant, and that's part of your storyline, well, they may not like that you've implied that their kitchens have mice in them. So that could be a problem. But if it's someone, they have a Diet Coke addiction and they drink a Diet Coke every day, typically that's going to be fine. Again, if you have any concerns, definitely consult with a lawyer on that one. Some people will steer clear just to be safe. But a lot of people will use those name brands. So I think that's one of those things you have to use your judgment. And again, if you're using it in positive connotation, it's not nearly as likely to be an issue, of course, as if you were to say something negative about it, or, if it becomes something, sometimes a brand doesn't like if you use it too often or you're trying to put it on your cover or something like that, because then it's an implied support of that book or product. But a passing, and then she ordered a I don't even know names of soda. I don't drink soda. And she ordered a Sprite at lunch. Typically, is not going to be a problem, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Um, do I have more than one Facebook page for New Shelves? So New Shelves Books has a business page. I, of course, have a personal page under my name, and we have talked about the difference between a business page and a personal page. So I have a personal page, and then I have a New Shelves Books page, and then I have something that is often called a passion page. It sounds much sounds much more racy than it is. And that is called Breathe Books. And Breathe Books is just a page that I have used in the past to connect with readers and reviewers, as well as to run ads for books. So we have in the past run ads and Facebook ads for books that we did under that Breathe Books page rather than doing it through New Shelves, because we're trying to reach readers. And so we've talked about algorithms and developing an audience. And over on New Shelves, our audience is industry folks, editors, publishers, authors. Over on the Breathe Books page, we've really developed that algorithm and audience to be more of a reader page. And so we have used that for some reader outreach in the past. So if you see that one, then you might see that one, and that would be me as well. And most authors are not going to need to do that because your audience is your readers. But if you are, for example, if you're an editor and you've got a page for that, you wouldn't necessarily promote your books on that same page. So that's why we've got a secondary page there if you happen to see that one. If there is anything other than Breathe Books or New Shelves Books, those are not me, those are not us. Um, Someone could have had a similar name, I don't know, but those are the only ones that I own. Yes. And again, if you're looking for the crash course for Facebook ads, go to youtube.com/slash new shelves books. It is right there. It's one of the most recent videos. So it should be easy to find. So you can go back and watch that. That was one of our most requested replays. So that's one of the ones that got asked to be put up on YouTube a lot. Let's see, where would you find stats on how many books are sold from the comparative titles that you uncover? Oh, there are a lot of ways to find out general sales numbers. Now, of course, if you have access to something like BookScan, it used to be Nielsen BookScan, now it's Circana BookScan, and that is a huge database that tracks titles and sales. Mostly it's tracking print books and US specific. So that is one tool. However, it's very expensive to have a subscription to Circana. So most people are not going to have access to that. However, if you have different tools like Publisher Rocket will give you some information on tools. I'm sorry, it'll give you some information on books that are selling through Amazon and it'll tell you some of those sales numbers. And then, of course, you can always do a search. If it's a very popular book, then it'll pop up. But other than that, you're not likely to get exact numbers. So that can be harder for authors. So rather than looking for the sales numbers, because unless it's widely, shared, you're not going to have access to, let's say, Circana. It's very expensive. Um, but what you can do is look at the book and look at the review count. It's estimated that approximately 10% of readers will review. So, kind of a rule of thumb is to take however many reviews that book has and multiply it by 10, and that'll give you approximate numbers of how many books that specific title has sold. It's not exact science, but it gives you general ideas. So if you're just looking to see if a comparative title is popular or not, that can help. If you are actually going to be quoting numbers, this book sold X amount of copies, don't use that. Please actually go look up details if you can find them. And again, this is why a lot of publishing houses, a lot of agents and agent companies will actually have subscriptions to places like Circana so that they can pull numbers for this when they are pitching to editorial boards and to publishers. So they will often have access to that, but the subscription cost is not worth it for most authors. Now, you can pull your own Circana numbers actually through Amazon Author Central. One of the features of Author Central is that through the marketing tab, you actually have access to your Circana number. So that's very convenient. Again, it's print books, really focused in the US specifically. So if most of your books sell through ebook, then you wouldn't necessarily have great numbers on there, but that is a tool that's available to you and it's free through Author Central. So use that if you need to, because that's certainly a nice tool to have and it's free. How important is including dialogue in a memoir, even if the writer can't remember exactly how certain conversations went? That is a good question. So, when we're talking about memoir, it's your memory. So, usually there is something on the copyright page that has some type of notice saying this is to the best of the author's memory. Names may have been changed, different things like that. So, memoir is typically considered creative nonfiction, meaning that it's based in a nonfiction story, but creative liberties were taken in memory. So I would say dialogue is pretty important because otherwise, just reading someone's internal story, it's a lot of tell, not show. Dialogue is how we can show different interactions. And if all we're doing is telling, it tends to be pretty dry. So it's not necessarily required. I have seen memoir that did not have a lot of dialogue, but it certainly makes me more interested when I'm reading a memoir. My favorite memoirs actually have almost felt like fiction because they pull you into the story. So I would say if you are writing a memoir, actually, if you're writing any genre, one of my best pieces of advice is you need to be reading in that genre. If you're going to be writing sci-fi, you need to be reading in sci-fi. If you're going to be reading romance, you need to be reading trending current romance. And the reason for that is you need to know what's common, what's accepted, and what readers are expecting, because there is kind of a reader expectation based on what they are currently reading and what's currently coming out. So if your book has no dialogue and all the current best-selling memoirs are dialogue heavy, your book is going to fall outside of expectations and readers probably will not enjoy it as much. So that's one of the things I would be saying is that if you are writing in a genre, you should be looking at the bestseller list, listen to an audiobook, get an ebook, get a print book, I don't care, but look and see what's currently on trend because trends do change from year to year, and certainly from several years. Whenever someone tells me, well, I was a really big romance reader in, the early 2000s. Fantastic. Romance has changed quite a bit in 25 years. So you need to read current romance and what's currently selling. It really is one of those things. And my favorite is when I have authors say, "Oh, well, I don't really read. I just write." Fantastic. Once again, you really should be reading the genre you're writing, so that you know what drives a story forward, what tropes are expected, what your reader expectation is, or else even if you write a fantastic book, if you're not meeting reader expectations, you're not likely to have good reviews. You're not likely to actually hook readers and make those sales. So if you're writing it personally for yourself as a hobby, just because it's what you want to write, cool. But if you are hoping to actually sell your book or get eyes on your book, have readers read your book, then you need to pay attention to what the reader wants because they're a part of the equation. They're part of that relationship of a book sales relationship. So you certainly need to pay attention to that. I'm restarting the fourth novel after I lost the first third of the manuscript, 25,000 words, and want to ask as a self-pubbed author, should I try inquiry? Number one, I'm so sorry that you lost part of your manuscript. I know that is heart-wrenching. Always keep backups, you guys. If you are keeping something online, well, number one, if you're keeping it on your computer, make sure that you are at the very minimum emailing your manuscript to yourself regularly. I personally suggest that you keep some type of online backup, like through Google or through Dropbox, something like that. But I know things happen and I know it is absolutely upsetting. So I'm sorry to hear that. As far as querying, if it's a fourth novel in a series, I would not be querying this. You're already in the series. If this is a new book, a new novel, that's not set within a series, then I mean, if you want to go traditionally published, then absolutely you have an opportunity here. Do know that editors and agents and publishers will look at your past books. They will look to see if they were successful. So if you are self-published and you maybe didn't have a lot of success and now you're trying to query, you may want to use a pen name to separate that a little bit. But if it's a new project that stands alone, of course, you can always query it. I work with multiple authors who not only self-publish, but they also will go through a publisher or they will self-publish and then sell rights to their self-published novels for translations or audio and different things like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. Just make sure that you are setting yourself up for success by having either a strong brand already or separating yourself with a pen name, or the other option also is, of course, to make sure that you've got a new project. They do not want the fourth book in your series. They just don't. They want something new and fresh from the start. And they do not want to republish your published novels. I promise. The chances of that are so incredibly rare. And authors seem to think it happens a lot, and it really does not. So start with something fresh and new. Let's see. And if I see a comment here, I don't read while I'm writing a book. That's fair if you don't want to maybe be influenced by writers while, are reading a book while you're writing. Fair enough. But it should still be a part of your research phase before you're writing the novel. You should, again, it's part of research, it's part of writing. So let's see. question here. When first launching a book, is it better to start out in Kindle Unlimited, then move it to all platforms, known as going wide, or the reverse, to go wide and then move to Kindle Unlimited? That's a great question. And not every book, by the way, has to go into Kindle Unlimited. It is an option. So for Kindle Unlimited, for those of you who don't know, it's a subscription. It's like Netflix for books. So I have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. I pay one price every month, and I can read as many books as I want in Kindle Unlimited. And authors are paid or publishers are paid by the page read. So if I read an entire book in a night and it's 300 pages, they get paid for 300 pages. If I pick up a book, read 20 pages, decide, meh, not for me, then they just get paid for 20 pages. It is a fraction of a cent per page. On average, the average book's going to make between $2 to $3 on a full read through on Kindle Unlimited. So you may be asking, why would anyone do that if I can price my book for $4.99, $7.99 on Kindle? And the reason why is because subscription readers tend to read in their subscription because they're voracious readers, typically on a budget. It's a lot of romance readers, cozy mystery readers, people who are reading constantly because even at $2.99, $3.99, if you're reading 10 to 15 books a month, that adds up really quickly. So subscription readers are paying one fee and then they're reading. Now that's of course offset by people who have a subscription who maybe end up reading one book a month because they don't read as much as they used to or they thought they did. And then that pool of subscription is then, divided by all the authors in the program based on the page reads. So you do get paid, but readers feel like they're reading for free, even though they pay for a subscription. Not every book, as I said, belongs in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is fantastic based on your readership. I have historical fiction authors who do great in Kindle Unlimited. Mystery books tend to do very well in Kindle Unlimited. Romance. Most of what you don't see in Kindle Unlimited is going to be standalone novels. The reason why is because if you're on a standalone novel, you need to make as much profit as possible on that single novel, which is typically going to be something like literary fiction, sometimes women's fiction, a thriller, something like that. And you need to make as much as possible on that single novel. And Kindle Unlimited is a volume game. It is not, it's not high profits on a single book. So people who are doing series or have a big backlist tend to do better with Kindle Unlimited. Nonfiction books aren't very often in Kindle Unlimited. Again, the reason why is when someone has a nonfiction book, and I'm not talking memoir, I'm talking a how-to self-help cookbook. People typically are buying this nonfiction book to fix a problem. I don't know what to cook for dinner. I'm going to buy this cookbook. I'm struggling with lack of sleep and not knowing how to get more sleep. I'm going to buy this book on how to fix my sleep habits. So people are typically have a problem. They're buying the book as the solution, and they're willing to pay more for that solution than they are for general entertainment. So many times nonfiction books will do better going wide because one of the key pieces here is that a book in Kindle Unlimited, unless you're with a large publisher that's worked out a different deal, but for any indie or small published press, any Kindle Unlimited book is exclusive to Amazon in ebook form, meaning your ebook cannot be anywhere else. It can't be in Overdrive for libraries or Nook for Barnes and Noble, Kobo. It can't be in any of those spaces. So it limits your readership to Amazon. Now, if we look at the numbers, Amazon is 91% of ebook readers in the US. It's about 87% in the UK, in Canada. So they have a large number of readers for the ebook. They're right there on Kindle. They've really done a good job of using their subscriptions and kind of cornering the market because they've made it easy to purchase and read ebooks directly from Amazon. So it's a huge part of the market. But if a big part of your marketing is libraries or schools or, in other countries outside of the US, they do tend to read on Kobo more. iBooks, some we tend to see business books can do well on iBooks because a lot of business people are using Apple devices. They tend to read a book here or on there on iBooks. So we will often see that. So you need to know what book you have, who your readership is, and how you should sell and market your book. So number one is you want to do the research. But to the question of do we start in Kindle and go wide or go wide and then go back to Kindle? It is much easier to start exclusive in Kindle Unlimited for the first 90 days. It's a 90-day contract that auto renews unless you opt out. So it is much easier to have a 90-day contract for Kindle Unlimited and let it run its 90 days. If you feel like you want to go wide after that, it's easier to opt out and go wide using a service like Draft to Digital or Ingram Spark or direct to each platform. iBooks, Kobo, you can actually upload your books directly to each platform. And it's much easier to go wide after the fact because if you start wide, if your book's already in Kobo and iBooks and all of those places, then if you want to go exclusive to Kindle after that, you have to remove your book from distribution in ebook. And sometimes that takes a really long time. If you are with an aggregator like Draft to Digital, sometimes you'll unpublish your book and the platform doesn't take your book off. They still keep selling it. It's listed. So you actually sometimes have to go directly to the platform and say, hey, my book is still up. And when this happens, because your book is meant to be exclusive to Amazon when you're in Kindle Unlimited, if you stop your wide distribution and immediately go into Kindle Unlimited without checking these platforms, sometimes what happens is, like I said, that Barnes and Noble listing, it didn't come down. The metadata got mixed up, whatever it is. And what can happen then is that Amazon is constantly scrolling through these other sales sites for titles in Kindle Unlimited. And if your book is found on that other site, your ebook is found, you are in breach of contract for Kindle Unlimited. They can take your book out of Kindle Unlimited. They can actually take your book off of Amazon, and they can even shut down your Amazon account for breaking the terms of service for Kindle Unlimited. So we don't want to play that game. Now, this does not happen all the time. I don't want to fearmonger anyone, but it happens more often than you might think. So if you are going from wide to Kindle Unlimited, it is best to stop your wide distribution early. Give yourself some time between that and starting your Kindle Unlimited agreement, and also physically go to each of the places where your book was listed and search your title, search your ISBN, and make sure that your ebook is no longer listed with those places. If it is, you want to contact that place directly and ask them to take it down. So the original question was just which way do we go from Kindle Unlimited to wide or wide to Kindle Unlimited? And as I said, it is much easier to start in Kindle Unlimited and go wide than the other way. But again, Kindle Unlimited is not meant for everybody. It's not where everyone sells books. I have some authors who actually sell a lot more through Overdrive to libraries than they do on Amazon. And so that's their market. And so it's really important for them to go wide. So you need to do the research on your market and your genre to know what works best for you. A lot of um, self-published authors, a lot of self-publishing platforms talk about Kindle Unlimited like it's a requirement. They talk about it like, oh my gosh, of course you must do that. But that is not true. It is general advice that works for a lot of people, but you need to do the research on your book and your genre to know what's best for you. Um, it's not required. It's an opt-in and it's an option. So definitely know what works for you. Now, of course, if you're a new author and you're trying to get more exposure, yeah, it's really convenient to have your book in a subscription service. Tell you what, last time a friend recommended that I watch a series on TV, I immediately went to my subscription places and I looked for it. If it's on that subscription service, I'll give it a try. Why not? But if I have to buy individual episodes from somewhere to give this show a try, meh, no thanks. I'll watch what I've already got on subscription. So it can be great for getting new readers, for getting people to try a new author who hasn't made a name and a brand for themselves. But if you're already established, again, if your audience isn't really a subscription reader, it's not really going to help you out much. So in those cases, skip it if it makes sense for you. Let's see. Question here. My book was recently favorably reviewed on Substack by an author locally well known in my genre. It's a three-paragraph review. Number one, is it okay to pull excerpts from her review to create a new editorial review on Amazon? Two, should I run my excerpts by the author to make sure she's okay with them before submitting them? Three, what other ways do you recommend to use this review to promote my book? So number one, I think it's perfectly fine to pull excerpts to use as an editorial review because if it was posted through Substack, it's technically considered public. And so I think it's fine to quote that. However, it is, especially if you know or you're in contact with the author, it's just good form to email them and say, wow, thank you so much. I adore your review and I'd love to use it in my marketing. Is that okay with you? Even if you don't run the specific excerpts by them, which is not required, I would absolutely, again, thank them for the review and run by them that you would love to use the review in their marketing. I'm sure they're going to say yes. I'm sure they're going to love that you're pointing back to them, their Substack, their brand. And they've already reviewed the book. Like you're not asking them to do any more work. So I've never seen someone say no here. I really haven't. In some cases, I've heard people say, "Oh, absolutely!" Like, do you need anything else from me? Can I give you any more words? You may also ask them how they would like to be credited. Some authors specifically want you to use um, their name, Keri Barnum, and then instead of just author, they are like, yeah, but I'd love if you'd credit me as Keri Barnum, USA Today bestselling author of, name of the book. So sometimes they'll ask for that, or you can offer how you would like to credit them. As far as running excerpts by them, you can, but you really don't have to. The rule for excerpts, general rule of thumb, is that if you're going to take any text out, you need to add the ellipses, the three little dots in between to show that something was removed. Of course, you cannot add texts. That's not allowed. But if you're going to remove text and use those little ellipses, the rule of thumb is that you cannot change the intent. So, for example, if someone wrote a review of a book and said, this is fabulously terrible and not recommended for anyone, don't buy this book. If I were to go, this book is fabulously dot 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 buy this book, or fabulous dot 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 buy this book. Technically, I did an excerpt and I put ellipses on the parts I took out, but I changed the intent and the meaning. This is not allowed. This is deceitful. This will get you in trouble. Don't do that. I know you guys on this call. I know you would never do that, but I'm going to say it anyway. We cannot change the actual intent of that review. And so you want to make sure that it's keeping with, the intent and the meaning. If it was a review that, was shredding your book apart, number one, you probably don't want to quote it. But number two, you can't change the meaning behind it. So that's kind of the gist there. And of course, with an editorial review or an excerpt, we want to keep things pretty short and tidy. We want a short, memorable excerpt. We do not want a book review. We don't want three paragraphs. It's just way too much. And it loses potency in marketing when you do that. Um, so there's that. As far as other uses for this review, wow, editorial reviews on Amazon is a great idea. And everyone, you all have access to your book editorial reviews through Author Central. If you're an author with a published book, traditionally hybrid, indie, doesn't matter. You can go claim a free Author Central account. You can claim your book, and on the books and marketing tab, you can, in fact, go to your book and you can add in editorial reviews for the US. It's not currently allowed everywhere else, but you can do it in the US. So go make use of that. So I would do that. I would also use it if it makes sense on your website, or you might use it on marketing materials. If you are pitching your book to local bookstores or to local libraries, and this author is well known in that area, you might use that quote in your marketing or on your one sheet. You might use it in your pitch. Recently quoted as the best book ever, every library needs it, by this really famous person who lives in the same state. I would love for you to consider my book. That just makes sense. If you are going to market with it, so if you're actually going to run ads, sometimes that makes sense. If this author has the same audience as your intended audience or a big name in a certain area, you can create graphics or different things like that with a short excerpt. And then what you do is you market specifically on places like Facebook. You would market with a visual using that person's name, targeting their own audience because they have social credibility with their own audience. So when you are using their audience with their words to tell people, hey, this person said this book was fabulous, they've already built trust with you. So hopefully now I can capitalize on that trust with their review of my book. That's a great way to use that in marketing. So you really want to think about how that person's name or audience is recognized, whether it be a local area, a certain genre, or, if a let's see. If I write a book and it's a romance book and I have a quote from a sci-fi author that's really well known in sci-fi circles, but not commonly known, their name's not going to do much for me, and their audience probably is not going to come read my romance book. So that doesn't do me as much good. That's kind of like a great blurb is a great blurb, but that's harder to market because you're not trading on their social credibility because your audience or intended audience for that book doesn't necessarily know who that sci-fi guy is. So that doesn't help you as much, but lots of great ways to do that. Congratulations on the new review. I am not surprised. Your book has been getting rave reviews there. Have I seen any new AI related or other opportunities that might help smaller titles connect with foreign publishers? I am seeing, I think there's a company, I have not used them. I cannot recommend them, but I've seen, someone from their company reached out to me. I want to say it's DropCap. DropCap is a translation company that, or I'm sorry, DropCap is a rights agency, I believe, that is really using some of those newer tools to create a database that they're pitching out for translation rights. And so I've seen that, and I have no personal experience. I looked at it a little bit when I did some research on them. I hadn't had anyone who could say I had great success, but it's pretty new. But I also couldn't find anything terrible about them or bad about them. So DropCap might be something to look into. And then we are seeing more and more where um, bigger publishers are starting to use AI for translations. And so we are starting to see some of those bigger publishers use that. And I think that's actually working the same for smaller publishers and titles. But the beauty of foreign translations and foreign publishers is that in the US, UK, and Canada, it's very much a set tradition that you need an agent, and from an agent you need to go to a publisher. In other countries, especially with translation rights, a lot of publishers are open to authors pitching themselves. So you can work with an agent, a subrights agent, to pitch your book for foreign rights. But I will also say that if you think your book would do well in a foreign market, look up publishers in those markets and just pitch your book yourself to the publisher for translation rights deals. They are much more open to it than a lot of US publishers would be. So that is a great opportunity. Now, if you are an agented author, you are traditionally published, your agents probably are handling this, and you do not want to go rogue on your own. But if you're self-published, if you, for example, do not have um, if you don't have an agent or subrights agent, anything like that, then pitching it yourself, but really know your market. Why would your genre be popular in that market? What kind of sales have you had here? Is your genre trending there? Is your topic trending there? So, for example, a lot of business books, US business books or English business books, are translated into Japanese. They're very popular in the Japanese language. And so sometimes that's a good pitch. Thriller novels do really well, especially like crime noir or things that are a little bit gritty, tend to do very well in Germany. So pitching to German publishers for translation could do well. Romance does really well in Germany as well. So that's something that might work well. Certain nonfiction titles will do well in different countries. So definitely do your research to see what languages or countries might be most interested in your book, what's happening in translations. And Google, good old Google is our friend. You can use ChatGPT for a jump start if you just want to type in questions, and then check that out as well. Oh, that is awesome. So apparently DropCap is going to be at IBPA Pub University in Minnesota, where I will be speaking. So anyone who's going to the IBPA conference in Minnesota, May 15th through 17th, apparently will get to meet DropCap there. So that'll be exciting. As I said, I've had just a little bit of contact with them, so I'll look forward to learning more about them. And of course, if you're going to Pub U, let me know because I'll be there and I'd love to connect with you too. And yes, thank you, Cheryl. I might take you up on that one. So I think those are kind of the opportunities, but definitely don't be afraid. I think it's important to know that the not only do social norms change from country to country, but the business norms for publishing change from country to country. So sometimes what would never work in the US will work in other countries. And sometimes taking a chance, throwing out an email is all it takes. And I've had some authors have success there. So, excuse me, don't be afraid to do that if you're looking at translations specifically. Translations are really taking off again with the help of AI translations. A lot of publishers are taking on more titles. And so not only is that very cool, but also it sounds really cool to be like, yeah, my book's published in three languages. No big. So definitely don't be afraid of that one. All right, let's see. I have another question, this one from Shayna. Let's see. After reviewing my Amazon ad campaigns, I am wondering how many keywords do I suggest in an Amazon ad? At the moment, I have 26. Shayna, I typically recommend for a Amazon ad campaign, I typically recommend that you try for 300 keywords. Don't go crying. I will tell you how to get those keywords. So there are, of course, different schools of thoughts. Some people will teach that you start very slow and small with keywords, where you're very tight to your topic or to only comp authors, and you want to start really tight and small. And then you kind of baby these ads and you develop these keywords over time. And so there are some schools of thought that do that. It is a way to help you grow your ads at lower cost. It will take a lot of babying and a lot of time. I typically do not have that time, and the authors I work with typically do not have the patience for all of the daily babying and being in there. So I take a little bit of a different approach, and that is that I want keywords that are broader, but I want about 300 of them. These might be genres, or I'm sorry, general keywords for the genre. So it might be, memoir, self-help memoir, mother-daughter memoir, general just keywords. Those would also be comp authors and titles. So if there are other books that are currently selling or trending in your genre, their titles and the author names are all great keywords. So that's a start. Um, I also will go even further into, location. We'll go into common searches for these things. So I use tools like Publisher Rocket. I will do where I'll come up with a list of comp titles and I will use those titles as keywords, plug them into Publisher Rocket and get more keywords. Some of them will make no sense to me because they're pulling and scraping Amazon data based on customers who actually bought those books and titles. So I trust it. I just trust the process and I take whatever keywords they give me, unless it's like absolutely outlandish or I'm like, whoa, no, I don't want that. But for the most part, I trust it and I develop a keyword list of several hundred. And then what I do after doing that, and I promise if you use Publisher Rocket and you can come up with 10 to 15 comp titles or general keywords for your book, you're going to be able to pull a list of several hundred. If you're looking for free tools, you can go to ChatGPT. You can type into ChatGPT keywords for memoirs on this topic, keywords for the memoir at this link, and then put in your own Amazon link or your comp author Amazon links. That will pull some keywords. You can use a Chrome extension called Instant Data Scraper, and you can go onto your comp titles on Amazon and on Goodreads, and you can troll and use that as well. Those keywords don't tend to be as tight to sales, in my opinion, but it's a free resource, so I won't knock it. But you want 200 to 300 minimum keywords. And then what I do is I set up a keyword ad using those 300 keywords. I set it up and I set it to run for 2 weeks. 2 weeks with a specific budget. Many times that's $5 a day, depending on if you're in a really competitive category, you might need to do $10 a day. So the question is, do you have, 14 days, $5? I'm not going to do math. That hurts my head. But do you have, $100, $200 to pool data? Because that's really what we're looking at is can we spend the money to pull the data quickly? And so I run these keywords. Now, just because you set your budget at $5 or $10 a day doesn't mean that's what you're spending. It means you're not spending more than that. So I set it for 2 weeks. Not going to mess with it for 2 weeks. Don't care what the ACOS is. Don't care what any of it is. I want data because I want to then use the data to refine my ads. So I'm looking for in those 2 weeks. Number one, am I getting the data? Am I getting enough impressions to even gather that data? Number two, if my keywords are working and selling books, I want that data as well. And I want at minimum 100 clicks because that's kind of like the minimum base data is 100 clicks. Ideally, when I'm working with keywords, I want 10 to 20 clicks per keyword before I make decisions on that keyword. But what we're looking for is data that tells us what's working, what's not working, what's getting eyes on my book, but maybe isn't selling my book. Should that keyword be selling my book? Is my book not positioned well? Am I marketing to the wrong audience? We've talked about that recently. But with just 26 keywords, you are severely limited unless those keywords are wildly popular. You are severely limited in how much exposure you're going to get. It can take months to gather data. And by the time you gather it, your data may be old and not so good anymore. So I'm not a fan of that. I would rather start with 200, 300 keywords, pull data, and then from that big pool of keywords, I start filtering down. I find what works, what doesn't work, and I start to cull the keywords that are not serving me, that are spending money and not converting, or pull out the keywords that are working. And then I do more research based on the keywords and the comps that are working. So I'm culling the things that aren't working while I'm also adding new keywords based on what is currently selling. And that is how I develop and refine my ads. It's not for everybody. It is, again, more quick, and it's typically looking at these ads every 2 weeks, every other week. I'm not a big fan of babying your ads day by day because, number one, Amazon takes 14 days to report all information. So you could make a decision, you could set something up on Monday, make a decision on a Wednesday, and then you find out you got a sale 2 weeks later and you've already moved on from that keyword. Now you're losing. So I'm not a big fan of that. And also, if we're honest, not most people have an hour a day to be fiddling with their Amazon ads. It's nerve-wracking, it's frustrating, and it's not sustainable for most people. That is not to say that some people aren't successful with that method. It's not my preferred method, but you do you. So that's how I start. That's how I run my ads. And then again, I'm reading the data. And sometimes we find out really quickly what works and what doesn't work. Sometimes we come up with conundrums. We're like, why isn't this working? Then we, again, need to read the data. We've talked about this. If you're not getting any impressions, okay, your keywords are not relevant enough to be getting any exposure, or your bids are too low. If you're getting a ton of impressions, but you're getting no clicks, you need to see if you're actually marketing to the right audience. Or is your packaging, your book cover, your title, is it actually in line with your genre? If you're getting a bunch of clicks, but you're not getting orders, then there's a problem with your conversion. Again, are you marketing to the right people? Is your book cover fulfilling the promise that you then put on your author or on the sales page? Are you selling what your book cover kind of represents? Is there a problem with your pricing? Is there no call to action? Is your book description not descriptive enough? Whatever it may be. So kind of going that way. And as far as what's working for your keywords, what's getting you clicks? What's getting you orders? What's getting you Kindle Unlimited page reads? That's how we know if they're working or not. But again, I don't judge a keyword until we've got a good 10 to 20 clicks on it. If we have, if we only have one click on something and it didn't get an order, well, we don't have enough data to say this doesn't work. It's still, it's still building up. So it's definitely a process. And I do ads consulting for anyone who maybe is feeling frustrated with their ads and you want actually someone to work with you and look at your specific ad data and look in your accounts and help you manage that and do the work of finding out what's not aligning and how to get ads. Um, and the goal is really to find out, will ads work for you and to refine them if they will. Ads don't work for everybody. I have one author right now that their Amazon ads, we could not get them to work. We could not. Facebook ads, they're going crazy and they're doing fantastic. So in her case, our ad work, we did both Amazon and Facebook. And in her case, we found out something really valuable. It's not worth her spending her time or money on Amazon because she wasn't getting a return on it. But she should absolutely be putting her time and money into Facebook. She was getting a return on it. So sometimes the valuable data that you collect is not to do it. And that happens sometimes. So we can't be afraid of that either. The other question was that do I have any tax tips for self-published authors or for authors in general? I am not a tax professional. Of course, I have to, CYA. I'm not a tax professional. I cannot give tax advice, but I will tell you what I do and what I have commonly seen and things to ask your CPA. Specifically, if you are save receipts. Most everything's online now, so it's pretty easy to get an accounting. I will say that if you are in the book business, whether you are a traditionally published author or you are self-publishing, I strongly recommend having a specific credit card, bank account, something where all of your book business happens and it's separate from your personal finances. So it does not have to be set up as an LLC or something like that, just a separate card or bank account. So you know that all of the expenses, all of the income came from your book business. So that way you can keep it separate. Makes it easier for your CPA and for you to look through things. So I strongly recommend that. Um, I also recommend that if you are going to be doing that, think of everything. Your editor should go on that. Keep tabs on that. If you are going on a trip and you're doing research for your novel, hey, that might be an expense you can claim. Keep track of that. If you are paying for consulting, keep track of that. If you had to buy a new computer because it's what you write on, keep track of that. If you have a Dropbox account because you are backing up your manuscript, keep track of that. That might be a write-off. So all of these things, it's just important to keep track of it. The best thing you can do is keep track of everything so that you can quickly and easily ask your tax professional, is this something that can be counted? Now, if you're running this as a business, some of the rules are a little bit different than on a hobby. There's certain amounts that you can take or not take. But keep track of it. If you're going to a writer's conference, if you are doing professional development, if you're buying tools for what you're doing, if you're running ads, if you're paying for a cover, an editor, all of these things may be tax write-offs. So definitely keep track of that. So that way you can present it to your tax professional. And again, highly, highly recommend do everything from a separate bank account, or even if it's just a credit card, if you use credit cards, knowing this is what everything's connected to. I know what comes in and what goes out. I'm not guessing, was that Amazon charge for my ads or for my new sweatpants? I know that this is only connected to my book stuff. I'm not wondering, was that plane ticket for going for fun or was it for a work trip? It's all connected. So that will make your life so much easier. It will make your tax professional so much happier. They will love you more, I promise. So that's what I recommend. And I usually recommend that again when any author's setting up their accounts. Get a different bank account for your royalties and for your expenses, even if you're transferring money over personally, having it separated and knowing what goes in and out will make tax time so much easier. So recommend that for sure. All right, you guys, it's 11 o'clock. So thank you for being here. Thanks for all your great questions. We'll be back next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And again, for anyone who hasn't checked out the YouTube recently, we've got a bunch of new replays up over on YouTube for New Shelves Books, and I'll be putting some more up as well. And as always, if you have any requests for tutorials, any new updates, anything like that, let me know. I do try to record those and put them up. So sometimes I don't think about what you guys want, but if there's a specific tutorial that you'd like to see, let me know and I'll work on getting that up. Thanks everybody for being here and I will see you next Friday. Bye.